I know, that's where I spend most of my day. All right. Good afternoon. In a statement that we issued yesterday afternoon, you saw the Secretary General said he was saddened by the loss of life, displacement of people, and destruction of property due to monsoon rains and associated flooding in India. He extends his condolences and solidarity to the families of the victims, to the government and people of India, and wishes those injured a speedy recovery. The United Nations stands ready to work with the authorities as they respond to the humanitarian needs resulting from the ongoing monsoon season. And we have some new senior appointments to announce coming from the UN Development Coordination Office. The Secretary General has appointed 2 new resident coordinators, one to serve in Botswana and the other in Myanmar, and that's following confirmations of those respective governments. Zia Choudhury of Bangladesh will be the new resident coordinator in Botswana, while Ola Almgren of Sweden will be the new resident and humanitarian coordinator in Myanmar. As you are aware, the resident coordinators are tasked with boosting coordination among UN agencies, funds, and programs on the ground to support countries to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. As previously announced, we remain with full gender parity among all our resident coordinators, covering 162 countries and territories. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that more than 9.2 million people across Southern Africa region are now severely food insecure due to a climate crisis that is impacting parts of the region. This figure is expected to grow to 12 million at the peak of the lean season between October and next March. Parts of the region are experiencing their lowest rainfall since 1981, which is leading to increased humanitarian needs. Some parts of the region have endured destruction by cyclones, pests, and disease, and are working to recover from the multifaceted impacts of those shocks. For example, in Mozambique, drought, 2 cyclones, and violence in the north are expected to leave nearly 2 million people severely food insecure from October through March. Namibia has received its lowest rainfall in 35 years. At least 290,000 of the poorest and most vulnerable people in the north of the country are suffering from acute food security crisis, with up to 90,000 livestock reported to have died due to drought. And Ursula Mueller, the Deputy Emergency Relief Coordinator, will travel to Djibouti from tomorrow until Friday to draw attention to the effects of humanitarian consequences of climate change to the country and the region. The Deputy Emergency Relief Coordinator will meet with people impacted by drought, high levels of food insecurity, and see firsthand the response of humanitarian partners. She will also meet with senior government officials, humanitarian organizations, and the diplomatic community. In addition, she will see firsthand the efforts undertaken to respond to challenges which include the growing number of refugees and migrants hosted in Djibouti. And from Libya, the International Organization for Migration said today that 3 months after the airstrike on the Tajura detention center, vulnerable migrants returned from sea continued to be taken to the facility despite persistent calls for its closure due to its proximity of a military location. As you'll recall, the airstrikes killed 53 migrants and injured more than 130 people. IOM also renewed its urgent call for the end to arbitrary detention in Libya and a gradual, orderly manner that guarantees the safety of detainees. It stressed the need for alternative solutions to be established and adopted urgently to end the intolerable suffering of thousands of migrants. And the UN Refugee Agency said today that while movements of refugees in Southeast Asia have dropped in the 18 months between January 2018 and June 2019, the threats of those fleeing violence and persecution are higher. The Rohingya remain the largest refugee group on the move in the region, with nearly 18,000 registered as the new arrivals in Bangladesh during this period. Nearly 1,600 refugees and asylum seekers embarked on dangerous maritime journeys in the Bay of Bengal and Andaman Sea, and at least 15 of the people drowned, but that is obviously a conservative figure. UNHCR is calling on all countries in the region and beyond to expand opportunities for solutions through safe and legal pathways that can help reduce the likelihood that refugees will risk desperate and dangerous journeys to be forced into the hands of criminal smuggling networks and find prosecution or reunite their families. And today is the International Day of Older Persons, with this year's theme being the journey to age equality. The UN aims to highlight that the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals will only be achievable if it is inclusive of all ages. For this observance, the UN also wants to stress the empowering older persons in all dimensions of development, including promoting their active participation in social, economic, and political life is one way to ensure the inclusiveness and reduce inequalities. The world's population is aging fast. The UN estimates that by 2050, 1 in 5 people will be over 60. The number of aged over 80 is projected to triple from 143 million in 2019 to 426 million in 2050. Also, to observe the day, the World Health Organization is launching a package of tools, including digital app, to help health and social workers provide better care for older persons. And as soon as we're done here, the permanent representative of the Republic of South Africa, who is also presiding over the Security Council for next month, will be here to brief you. In the meantime, I will entertain some questions. Mr. Klein, then Mr. Bays.
Thank you. Do you have any comment on today's violence in Hong Kong, including the report of at least one protester having been critically wounded by police shooting?
Yes, I think, as a matter of principle for the Secretary General, we've always called for demonstrations to be peaceful and for security services to exercise restraint. Mr. Bays.
I was going to ask about that as well, so I will give you a follow-up question. What is the Secretary General's response to the fact that live ammunition was used, and does the Secretary General believe that China is in breach of the 1984 Joint Declaration, and does he see a role for the UN in this?
It's not for the Secretary General to comment on that 1994 declaration. 84. You said 94.
Oh,
okay.
1984. If I said it wrong,
it is the Day of Older Persons, so okay. Sorry. Let's try it again. No, it's not for the Secretary General to emit an opinion on that joint agreement, and I think my answer to Joe covers your follow-up.
Can I have a different question on a different subject then?
You may.
Today is the deadline set by the Turkish government for establishing a safe zone, or coming up with a plan to establish a safe zone in northern Syria. How closely is the UN and the Special Envoy following this, and do you have concerns about unilateral Turkish action?
We are obviously following this closely. We've always expressed our concerns with safe zones. We want to make sure that they do not infringe on the rights of people who want to seek asylum. We want to make sure that civilians are protected. Nizar.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephane. Among the thousands of Saudi soldiers arrested by Ansarullah or seized by Ansarullah, there were hundreds of children aged 15 or less, some of them between 15 and 16. Has Mr. Griffiths been in touch with the Ansarullah for their release? And if they are releasing 350 prisoners of war, are the children among them?
Listen, we have no, as far as I know, we have no first-hand account of exactly, we have not, I think, had any contact with those who were released. I would refer you to what Mr. Griffith said yesterday on the issue of the release. Today he arrived in Sana'a for a 2-day visit. He again commended yesterday's unilateral release of detainees by Ansar Allah, saying that for him such initiatives create a conducive environment and build confidence for the resumption of peace talks, the peace process. And Mr. Griffiths hopes that this will encourage parties to renew their commitments towards the exchange of prisoners and detainees in accordance to what they've all agreed to in Stockholm.
I'll follow up on that. Are there any investigations regarding the bombardment of the jail where many prisoners were kept in and more than 100 were killed by the coalition fighters?
Let me check up on you for that. James.
Thank you, Stephane. Tomorrow marks the one-year anniversary of the death of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. I think in the 1 year we can safely say that the quest for justice and accountability for the people who were behind the killing has been a difficult one. And some people, Amal Clooney, Agnes Callamard and Human Rights Watch, say that it's exposed the frailty in the international system, and they're suggesting a new UN standing mechanism or instrument that automatically clicks into gear and investigates extrajudicial executions like that one the next time around something like this happens. What do you guys think?
Look, I haven't seen the specific proposal. I think the mechanism that exists through the special rapporteurs is an extremely important one, at least to bring light to those extrajudicial executions. For his part, Secretary General's position has been stated and remains unchanged, and the need for justice to be done.
To that, do we expect any statement on the first anniversary of the murder of Khashoggi by any UN official tomorrow?
As far as I think I've answered the question for today. We'll see what tomorrow brings. Yes, Madam.
Good afternoon. I'm Disha Shetty, a RAF fellow from India Spend in India. The Indian government has admitted to the Supreme Court in the country, in India, that security forces in Kashmir have picked up children as young as 9. And this is, I believe, about the 55th day of communication clampdown in the region. So is the UN likely to respond?
Look, I haven't seen what's happened in front of the Supreme Court. What we have said, we'll continue to say, is that in order to resolve the current situation in Kashmir, human rights need to be addressed and need to be at the forefront. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Sixtus Mbom from Cameroon. On the conflict in Cameroon, the dialogue, which the UN mostly welcomed, actually started yesterday, but the separatists boycotted the dialogue. So I'm just wondering, is the UN already thinking about what to do if killings continue after this dialogue ends?
Well, we've seen that some people did not participate in the dialogue. I think we do have to let some of that process play through. We were present to observe some of the proceedings at the dialogue, though the process itself is Cameroonian-owned and Cameroonian-led. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stephane. Going back to the issue of Kashmir, in the readout of the SG's meeting with Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, it says that he called for restraint of all parties and to solve their differences through dialogue. Just mention dialogue only. I'm waiting.
Sorry, I'm waiting for...
And
Thank
I'm
you.
waiting.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, there are 11 Security Council resolutions. Wouldn't it be more meaningful if the SG added to the word dialogue and international law or relevant Security Council resolutions? Why he stopped at the word dialogue only?
I think dialogue is a primary requirement for the resolution of any dispute between two nations.
There is a framework, legal framework.
Yes, and I would refer you to the statement that we issued a bit earlier on that. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Stephane. China had the 77th anniversary celebration yesterday, and President Xi Jinping said in his remarks that China is going to stay on the peaceful development path. Does the SG have any comment on that?
No, it's not for the SG to comment. I would refer you to what the Secretary General said at the end of last week at the public event commemorating the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China. And that statement is public. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Follow up to Hamid's question. Okay. The Prime Minister of Pakistan, after giving his speech, went to see the Secretary General to plead with him to somehow go and intervene in this issue. And I mean, I mean, just to emphasize the gravity of the situation that is there, they've been incarcerated for almost more than almost 2 or 3 months, and that is what he was trying to say, that he should. So has the Secretary General at any point decided that he will be able to go and see for himself what is the situation?
It's not an issue.
Or plead with the
the Secretary
Indian Prime
General
Minister?
is very well aware of the situation in Kashmir. He has discussed the issue over the past few weeks and months with the leaders of both countries, with the foreign ministers of both countries. The High Commissioner for Human Rights herself has issued a report, and we will continue to engage in whatever way we can. Thank you. Nizar.
Do you have any statement regarding the opening of the crossing points between Syria and Iraq? Does it help for humanitarian purposes and other issues or not?
I don't know what the exact impact is on humanitarian purposes, but I think any opening of borders should be welcomed. Thank you.